Hey guys, it's time. The time has finally come. It's an important day here.
Yes.
I'm Captain Foley.
I'm Commander Cockins, and welcome to episode 1, full spoiler review, analysis, breakdown, Trekyard style. It's been a long time getting from there to here and then back to here, because...
It's been a long road. Oh wait, wrong show.
And we can't sing
All
the
right.
title sequence with words, hasn't got words, so we can't use this one.
All right, so it is time for Discovery, and the first episode was called A Vulcan Hello. Or so I'm told, because they didn't give us they don't give us episode title names like every other Star Trek series ever, which is kind of annoying to me. I love having episode names so I can have to look them up is annoying.
So Stuart,
What do you like?
I'm fine with that.
Oh, okay.
I want to get straight into this, Stuart, because there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and we started this with a beautiful shot of a cloud thing, ends up being T'Kuvmach's eyes, and this whole big scene, this new franchise, this new sort of reboot retcon thing starts with T'Kuvmach saying a lot of stuff to the Klingons. What did you think about this opening? Because obviously we've been waiting for years, and I was certainly thinking, this is damn surreal, you know? What was your first impression, first scene?
I thought it was pretty impressive the way they did that. The zoom out from his, well, looked like a nebula, and then became his eye, and then hearing his speech. Kind of an interesting way to start a Star Trek series, if you ask my opinion. Which you are doing, and you're here to see my opinion and Samuel's. So I thought it was pretty impressive, but at the same time, I know we've seen the Klingons before, but I got a few things to say about the Klingons. But first of all, what are your thoughts on?
It was dramatic, and it set the stage as being that the Federations aren't the shining jewel of the heroes in this. You know, we're starting with where this thing's. Although we learn obviously later on, T'Kuvmach is not exactly the average vanilla standard commander. You know, he is a messiah of sorts. He's a radical Klingon. You know, this is a super. He is a super thingy sect.
Oh, it's funny you said vanilla Klingon, because there literally is a vanilla colored Klingon. But yeah,
I prefer the purpley ones because they're more yummy. But yeah, so very dramatic, and it's all about staying Klingon. It's about keeping the racial, the spiritual, the cultural purity. That's the background of why. But we'll obviously learn more about that later on. But then we get the real sort of Star Trek pre-title sequence, which we got in the trailer. They just put more in. What do you think of this sort of first scene and the introduction of our two characters, the proper one?
I thought that was interesting. I wish they kind of would have started with that instead of the Klingons, personally. This is more of a Star Trek series kicking off point than the Klingon aspect.
I think that was kind of the point, to do it that round as a deliberate...
Yeah. And of course, I knew exactly everything that was coming here except for the well and the water. Pretty much everything else was spoiled by the trailers, because I knew they were walking a big delta. You know, to mark to give them a star, as it were. There
wasn't a lot of surprises in this two-parter.
No, there weren't.
But
maybe one or two. But
yeah, it was a nice sort of Federation-y start. Although, you know, this alien race, they didn't need to bother showing it. Like they weirdly focused on things like this. Oh, in the trailer, there's this great cool alien. Doesn't matter. It's there. They're watching it. No impact. It's very strange. They could have. I wouldn't have built that scene like that if I was doing it.
Yeah, well, I think they just wanted to show off the fact that there are going to be very alien-looking aliens in this series. And what better way to do that than just have a quick glance at one? I don't know.
Yeah, and then she brings of all things you do, the commander and second in command beam down to planet, bring a phaser rifle to just shoot through a well to save the planet, and then they get out.
Yeah, and I got to say, her aim is pretty impressive to shoot that far straight down a well without hitting the wall of the well. I know she shot like 3 times, but...
Well, we know in TOS they have auto-targeting, so... I mean, come on, and if Riker could shoot there, and it hit there... I mean, auto-targeting is very effective these days.
Wow, yeah.
So not much else new in that scene, but obviously we're being introduced, these are the two people we should care about. These two females, and again, we have nothing... That never even occurred to me, I don't know if it occurred to you. Yeah. Black Chinese, but it's just their people, and it's interesting what the characters are.
Yeah. No, it was an interesting introduction to the two characters, and I gotta say that first shot of the Shinzao coming down, and
it's Shinjo. We can now say it's officially Shinjo,
well,
because they
said it 3 different ways in the show.
Do they?
Three different people were saying it. And that's why I just don't know what to call it.
Well, the main two say Shinjo.
Shinjo, but the captain also has an accent. But anyway, that first shot of it was fantastic. I love seeing it hovering with the thrusters, and that was really dramatic when it comes through the sand and you hear that kind of that Star Trek music. It's like, yes, this is a new series. I'm excited.
And then we've got this title sequence, which we're going to mention now, but I think we might talk about it a little bit later. Any brief reaction on the radically new title sequence?
It was really impressive. I really liked the style. But like I said, we're going to do a video on just that.
My summation was it felt like the Westworld one. Sort of a very modernistic, very sort of...
I haven't seen that, so...
highbrow, artsy one, but with a bit more context than some other ones.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I had a nice taste of TOS right at the very beginning of it. Now, just from the music, I mean. One thing I do want to point out is it still said executive producer Brian Fuller, teleplay Brian Fuller, story by Brian Fuller, and created by Brian Fuller. His name is all over this.
Yep.
And I thought that he at one point said that it's kind of strayed from his original vision so much that he didn't really recognize it. So that kind of surprised me.
Well, we know the pilot was more his baby than the other ones. So I'm assuming they might take some of those away, except like story by, as it gets further on, because they filmed, they worked hard on a lot of the stuff before he left. So, but that was a bit strange. I noticed they didn't credit Gene Roddenberry last, like every other, or at least Enterprise always ends on created by Gene Roddenberry. It ends on directed by, and I'm like, really, you're going to credit Brian and him after Gene? Come on, guys, put Gene last.
Yeah, good point. I didn't even notice that, but you're right.
Yeah, so first scene, they are at the edge of Federation space for an interstellar relay, which is a communication relay. It's been damaged, and there's a Workbee-esque thing.
Yeah.
Thoughts on this intro?
That opening scene was fantastic. I was drooling over that. Just the seeing the relay station or
Beautiful.
the relay.
Beautiful.
And then having it parked right above it. Basically, that she's looking out the window. It's right in front of her. And you got the Workbee bringing it in. And
one long shot.
Yeah. And that's typical Starfleet Federation mission. Out fixing the Amargosa Observatory, doing whatever. I thought that was fantastic. I was really pumped at that point.
And I did like that was the lure for the Klingons. Like, obviously, spoilers, that's the lure for the Klingons. But that was a very, very, very familiar intro. I agree. And I like that I try to note lots of little things, but when the Workbee, and a Workbee variant, whatever, is fixing it, there's distinct NX01 bleepy sound effects.
Yeah.
They use a lot of different sound effects from a lot of different things we'll talk about later, but they use NX ones there. And I was like, okay, cool.
I did not notice that, so I got to go back and watch that again.
They use a lot of sound effects.
I thought there was a lot of odd stuff on the bridge as far as crew went, and the bridge layout's awful. It's not a good bridge layout.
It is. It's huge. A lot of consoles and a lot of empty space. A lot of empty space. And I know the camera's meant to move it, but if you were building something where space is a premium or you need space, you would not... I don't think you'd design a practical bridge layout like that. There's also consoles that turned this way. The TOS bridge is almost perfect. It's just a ring. You can see everything. Everything's functional.
It's at eye level for the captain,
Yeah, this is an odd bridge. Although, it looks nice, but it very much looks like any other sci-fi. And I will note a couple of things I noticed with the bridge. There's actually, in between the helm and the other person, there is a TOS-style circly bit. And the guy is actually on a sliding rail. They each are for their things to get different consoles, which is I think Tom Paris was. Like Enterprise was thinking of. Yeah, absolutely, like Enterprise, and you can see Saru's station behind them. Again, lots and lots of consoles. It's way busier, and yet feels way more empty in some ways, given the amount of space. But the plot is they're here to fix this relay, and they detect something. It's a thing.
Before you move on to your next point, I just got to say one thing I really, really, really appreciate, as you said earlier, were the sound effects.
Oh, yes.
This very subtle TOS bridge sound effects. Sometimes not so subtle, but I think they helped me associate this bridge with TOS, even though visually it's just totally not. I really appreciate the sound effects because they didn't change them, they didn't alter them, they were pretty much exactly on point. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. Yeah, I mean, the TOS, they walk in the bridge, and it is just 100% TOS sound effects.
Yeah.
and they sound perfectly perfect. Like, they sound like they belong. And that straight away you feel there's something there. I mean, that's 50 years of in our psyche. Trek fans, we know those sounds. So that was great. But I will say that there are also lots of TNG bleeps and bloops and alerts. Yeah. And it's like, okay. Because I've got them all. Because they've been on CDs and games, so I've got them all. So I recognise them all.
They just took a big sound effects shotgun and pointed it at the scene. And there you go. There's some Star Trek sound effects.
Some for better, some for worse.
Yes.
But the big thing I really picked out, before we get to the telescope scene, Saru and Michael are bantering, but we've already set up, they've served on this ship for 7 years. I've only known you like 3. And the banter they were doing is as if they've just met each other. It was not very friendly. It was, they don't know each other. They don't know each other's whims. They're sort of going at each other. She's trying to take over his console. He's firing back saying, no, I can do better.
Yes.
That was not a 7-year relationship. Doesn't matter who they are. They have not known each other for 7 years. That was very bad, poorly written scene if they're trying to represent that.
Yeah, I actually made the same notes about that. Their banter seemed to look very forced, and it didn't seem like a natural crew that had been working closely together for a long time. And the fact that she took over his console, it says something of her character, I guess, maybe. But that's showing distrust in your crew. And I don't think that's something that somebody in that kind of position would do, necessarily.
Well, not go too far ahead, but in the start of the second episode, they show a 7-year flashback, and she's disrespectful, just plain disrespectful. And not even on the Vulcan, just disrespectful. And because she filmed these scenes, not very far apart, she didn't act them 7 years apart. She's also disrespectful to the crew, to him specifically, in that scene. If it was 2 weeks after, it'd be fine, but 7 years, again, just did not buy that for 1 second.
So they see this thing, and they're deciding how to get to it, and they said they don't have a shuttle maneuverable enough. That came off as odd to me, because I know that the shuttle pods aren't very big from NX-01. I mean, I don't know. It just didn't that seem a little odd to you that they didn't? It seemed like a contrivance to get her out in a spacesuit.
Well, I didn't pick it up first time, so I was going to make the note that why they're using a suit where they could use it. But I think we've had worse exposition reasons for other Trek. We shouldn't judge this poorly.
Well, that's true.
For lack. I mean, there's things we can point out.
I'm not judging it poorly.
Silly. I think if we look to the TNG part, we say, well, that dialogue stinted, or the Riker and Troy meeting. Well, that is not a relationship for 10 years. Things like that. But I think that was just another. I mean, maybe it's just not good enough in safety margins. But it was weird to send a single person in an EVA suit. I mean, talk about 20 minutes to get there and back. She's alone. What if she hits an asteroid and loses air? I mean, you should have sent at least a team of 4 or 5 with a science officer who can detect it and scan things. Really,
well, they tried to explain that away by saying I don't want to risk any other crew, but they send the first officer out. Starfleet puts a lot of time and effort into those officers to train them. They're not going to just be doing that kind of thing without, like a backup team. Yeah,
she should have had at least 2 more people, but obviously the plot wouldn't have happened if she had.
And speaking of the launch of the suit, it was very cool. The suit's very neat. I love the heads-up display on the inside of the helmet. I think it's something that TOS should have had, though they would have had if they could have had, of course. Yeah. But then they were positioning the ship a little bit to get her kind of into position, and there's like a vision. Again, it's like a gamer's joystick, like we see in Insurrection.
And everyone didn't like it in Insurrection.
Yes, but it's the exact same joystick, and she's got a throttle, which is fine, I guess. But just the bridge control seemed very
Franklin.
Yeah,
because they have the exact same. I mean, it's very similar.
Yes. Yeah. So not happy with those controls,
but yeah. So it's interesting that it wasn't an EVA suit. It was called a thruster pack. Now that says to me that that's a spacesuit which was a separate thruster pack on, kind of like what Spock did, because he had a spacesuit, but he had a thruster pack. So I like that little attention to detail. It was a separate unit. Very distinct woman's computer voice, and throughout both episodes, the computer is its own thing, fully integrated, fully communicative, fully thinking, like a pretty high-end AI, which is even better than Magell in TNG in terms of responsiveness and human sounding. So I guess they went lower in computer AI technology because reasons. I don't know. So yes. Oh, one little I thought maybe an Easter egg because it's audio design, but the countdown, the 10-second, 10, 9, 6. Outside it was fine. As soon as they got to the bridge, it was like, are they going to self-destruct? That sounds identical to the 7, 6, 5. And I was like, no, get out of there. That's identical.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay.
Just weird the way it was doing it, the editing. It's funny though, but yeah.
No, the scene of her flying towards, through the asteroids and weaving through them, that was really awesome. Now we know that in space, when you see an asteroid field or an asteroid belt, they're actually so far apart. They're when they represent them on screen, they're totally different for dramatic effect. They're never that close. But anyway, it was cool. Approaching the artifact was really neat, and it was a cool looking artifact. She wasn't very scientific in her... Well, she said that herself. She wasn't very scientific in her commentary.
So maybe not the right one for the job.
Yeah. This coming from the person that when she was on the planet with the captain had the storm hitting them down to the second, down to 22 seconds, instead of just however many minutes. I thought that was a little odd because she's not Vulcan. I know she was raised on Vulcan, but really... Well, I thought the second was a bit much.
Well, I don't know what her specialities are as a character. Some people... if you want to go into command, you have to go another... you have to be either in tactical and go into that because you want to, or science or engineering. I didn't get a sense of her abilities in anything in particular. She wasn't sciencey, she wasn't tactical, she wasn't engineering. She was just commandy, and that's not a line in of itself. She was Science Academy and then second in command. But that seems kind of strange to go from the ward of an ambassador to second in command of a Federation staff ship. Second in command itself has no specialist duties beyond the crew. So I guess she's just crew management officer. So then she definitely wasn't the right person. I will say though, I'm glad whatever happened to Torchbearer happened maybe 2 or 3 minutes after she got there. It was instant. So if she was gonna she was enjoying the moment. There's no reason to think there'd be people there.
Yeah.
So she was enjoying it, but she wasn't really analysing it properly. Although I will say it looked very much like Thor style architecture from Dark World, that sort of style. Obviously not a very Klingon vibe. And the Torchbearer shows up, and my biggest note is that he's rubbish and feels like Captain Phasma from Star Wars. Promoted and then appeared for 3 seconds and plays no important role really. Weird promotion.
My comments on that I wrote down was Torchbearer easily killed, very disappointing.
And Stuart, we could play about Batleft's bad design with the other stabby bits that you might stab yourself. Guess what? He gets stabbed by his own Batleth. Yeah. With no effort whatsoever. Just a slight shove. A man who's obviously had training in this suit because he's the Torchbearer for EVA combat. It's like EVA combat stuff. Yet he gets killed 1 second because of the flaw. If he had an original Batleth, he couldn't have stabbed himself with it because he wouldn't have just flawed design. It's just funny.
So go check. Go check out our Batleth episode on this redone Batleth.
We could have helped them not lose the important who's meant to unite the houses, who died instantly.
Although I got to admit, I did like the suits analysis of the Torchbearer thing, where it kind of went Klingon iconography, verified, and then you see the Batleth highlighted, and Batleth shows up on our screen to tell the weapon. That was really cool. The analysis of the.
Okay, so question: why was the Torchbearer there? Because the other dude never got into a suit that we saw, never went to the beacon that we saw, and was always on the ship for what we saw. I guess he could have got there, turned it on manually, got off before and after the wipe thing. But it seems odd that he'd be there, and surely the suit either can survive longer than 20 minutes, it's way more advanced than Federation tech, or he was inside the obelisk for whatever. Was he hanging out there for days, for hours?
It wasn't sufficiently explained for me. It just didn't make any sense. The fact that as soon as she landed, it activated, and almost immediately.
I buy that.
Yeah.
It's like it's beginning.
But it's almost immediately. It's like proximity alert, and you see the shadow move in first, and then you hear proximity alert, and she turns around, and there he is. It's like, where the hell did you come from?
And why is he attacking her?
Yeah, that's a pretty shitty plan for the Klingons to attack their relay and assume that they're going to see this thing in the asteroid, even though it's masked.
Yeah.
Cool,
what if they just didn't see it and left? It's like, they didn't take the bait. Yes, because we had a masking signature to go back. Leave it visible, please. We have to destroy another satellite now. Come on.
Yeah.
Use your Klingon training to Kurmach, the academy. I like saying that name. I can do the Yeah, that was again the amount of hype for this torchbearer was pitiful and not important.
Yes.
Like, just
and
great suit though. Just didn't really get to see it or enjoy it.
And how many times have, like we've said before with these the trailers leading up to this, a lot of times they're very deceptive. And how many times for other movies and things have you seen something that you think is going to be a huge part of it,
the
and
Rhino
it's in there for maybe
from Spider-Man. Literally,
and how successful was that, right? Just to be disappointed. So that's definitely one of those disappointing moments. So although we do get a clear idea of why his ship is called Sarcophagus ship right after that.
Oh, yes.
The fact that it's covered in hundreds or thousands of coffins, that was really interesting. I didn't expect that. As we've said before, we thought the Sarcophagus ship just held a sarcophagus of a powerful ancient Klingon. But no, it's covered in sarcophaguses. I mean, that's pretty fantastic, actually. Great idea.
Yeah, it's pretty dark, but this ship isn't a combat ship. It's just like a house flagship ceremonial thing that's old as sin. You know, it's not. But yeah, very, very interesting. It shows the generations of this. I mean, this could even date back to Kalus's time. You know, the original. Maybe it was his flagship that went through the generation. Yeah, that was a great scene. And the set looks great. But I wish they had more Klingonisms. Like some flags with the emblem. Like if you had pulled that set out of this and said it wasn't Trek, nobody would ever say it was Klingon. Like, you know, this. Yes, it might be a very old ship. These are modern Klingons who've lived in real time. You know, you would think they'd have either modern computer stations. I mean, the fact they say later on the ship can outgun us means the ship has been refit with weapons multiple times to be, you know, up to date. So why wouldn't they have modern consoles which would look like Klingon consoles? And it would be nice to have seen, like, they had some, although I will say they did use a Klingon sound effect when they pressed some buttons in the second episode. You know, literally the Klingon sound effect from TNG. I was like, yay, the Klingons have Klingon sound effects. That's nice. Speaking of sound effects, when Michael's, she's been attacked, she's floating. They pick up her medical readings, and it's the medical doop doop. It's the medical sound effect from TOS. That was a nice little touch. Again, sound effects, they did great. That was that was one of their big bonus ticks, I think. Their integration of just a literal sound library. Although then when they couldn't transport them back, they said use a tractor beam. They used a TNG/Defiant sound effect, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think they get 90% marks for their sound effect usage.
Then a lot of TNG sound effects, a lot of Defiant sound effects in particular when it comes to Red Alert and stuff. They used these probably more than TOS on balance because they kept. Like the first alert was TOS, but all the later alerts were all TNG.
I think they were using them to spark the commonalities in all Star Trek fans, even if they haven't seen TOS or they're just a fan of one or TNG or whatever. I think they're just doing that to kind of get that little nod to it, and on a subconscious level, have them tuned in.
So what do you think about? I guess we're taking quite long on this episode, but there's actually quite a lot to talk about. They can't transport Michael back. Yeah, they can still get a radio signal through to her despite not being able to get through the entire time, and they play it off strongly that we can't reach her. There's no power. There's no signal yet. We get a signal through, which, she's 10 feet from the. They really play that up, and then she's back, and she beams out. Obviously, 10 seconds later, without any hassle. They fix the problem. They shouldn't never make a problem seem awful. Then have one scene in between, and then she's back just fine.
Yeah. Yeah,
that was a bad pacing moment for them.
Yeah, again, not sufficiently explained, like a few things in this episode. So,
or even just don't set it up so much as an issue. Or at least say if she had said, "Okay, take us closer," that I was expecting her to say that. That closes the gap. The range becomes better, and then you're more susceptible to Tukuvmach being right there because he drew cloaks later, and it's like, damn, they're right there. So being closer would make a lot of sense. So I was kind of surprised by that. Then, Stuart, we go to the Vulcan science, sciencey thing.
Well,
Flashback.
Before that, we see her in a chamber, much like S01, sick bay, which is kind of a nice callback. But then, yes, Vulcan Science Academy. Well, again, a lot of people are going to call JJ similarities to this, but the same kind of thing was seen, I believe, in Yesteryear.
I think it was actually, wasn't it?
Yeah, so that's where it was kind of set up. I think it's an interesting classroom idea. I mean, so, and the colors are interesting. The colors are off for Vulcan for me, but it's very nice and bright and looks nice.
Yeah, it's very Tron as well.
Yeah, that's the feel I got. Tron or Cybertron, like the Transformers. Yeah.
And yeah, she asked the questions. They get to reiterate the Klingon hierarchy, and they said, in invariable honor-shame dynamic is their culture. Mm-hmm. And something that really stood out to me, Klingon terror raid, the most recent Klingon terror raid. What? Excuse me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
mm-hmm.
That's very dramatic. What was your notes on that?
Same thing. They're trying to draw parallels with terrorism, and using the Klingons using their religion to unify their houses is very much a religious
and a martyr.
Yes,
a reincarnated martyr figure. Spoilers.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, I just put down that they're trying to do social commentary, but in the wrong way, because it doesn't reflect what we know about the Klingons.
They have raiding in the Enterprise. They have raiding parties to steal stuff, but they don't kill them. They use them to give them stuff. You know what I mean? Klingons aren't really cold-blooded terrorist murderers. Mm-mm. That's not honourable. I mean, it's like the Romulans. They attacked Kittimer without warning, and the Klingons called them, non-honourable whatevers. Yep. That was a distinct thing, and if that's a terrorist raid, it was fascinating because they specifically say in a few scenes we haven't seen them for 100-ish years, rarely seen them, and yet so every time we do see them is terrorist raids. You would think terrorist raids would equal let's have hostilities with Klingons, or let's make more of an impact. I don't think you can have we never speak to them combined with they attack us on a regular basis. It's like, well, it doesn't really parallel. Yeah, they dropped the ball with some of the Klingon stuff in this, and that really stood out to me. Really stood out to me.
And as you just mentioned, the Romulans attacking Kittimer, Michael Burnham's story so closely mirrors Worf's story.
Yeah.
A little too much. And I think they drew too much attention to that. They made it too much of a plot point and too similar to Worf. I think that was a mistake.
Yeah, because he was adopted by humans, obviously, and she was, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So
and they make a point of showing the attack, and she was just a child and being saved by Zurich in this case. So I don't know. It just the similarities to Worf are just a little too much for me.
Well, I didn't notice them, which means that they didn't play that strong on me. But now you say them, that's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me get the scene where they specifically say, no one's seen a Klingon for 100 years. So, hey, what do you think about that? Because they're surprised.
They said they've had few interactions with the Klingons in 100 years.
Yes.
So Archer goes to Kronos and has some problems with the Klingons a few times during Enterprise. Mm-hmm. And then, the Klingons kind of... Or the Federation knows to stay away from the Klingons. I don't know what the situation is. It seemed a little odd to me because in TOS... the Klingons were...
They went to our bars.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a thing.
Yeah, so... Well, I guess this whole season, though, of Discovery is going to kind of explain that, hopefully. So...
I mean, I want to talk about this in a separate episode, but obviously people won't necessarily watch all the way through this to watch that. So I'll just say, the part of Enterprise, which is our first meeting with Klingons, is 2151, right?
Yes.
And then several seasons, including saving the High Council... and the eugenics virus. I mean, okay, yes, they sort of start, with our technologies. But anyway, we saved some of their race. Then 1 year after Enterprise, that's when they stop contacting us. That same year, the Romulan War happens, which lasts 4 years. Then the Romulans disappear, the Klingons disappear, and then 98 years later, this happens. So I guess for literally 98 years, we don't see the Romulans at all. Mm-hmm. And we don't see the Klingons almost. So basically, the Federation is left to expand for 90 years
that makes sense, though, with the scene we see later where the bridge officer was sent down to sickbay, stumbles into the brig, and says, "Why are we fighting? We're explorers."
Yep. Oh.
It shows that they're not used to that.
The unprecedented piece of the last 100 years.
Yes, and Starfleet is very focused on exploration and having things good. You know, they're not
That's interesting.
anticipating a problem. So
I just don't think the Klingons would actively. I mean, I guess the Federation was still newborn. I mean, you know, end of the Romulan War, it wasn't even a Federation. Well, it was just about the Federation end of the Romulan War. It's super newborn, but to just the Klingons. I guess they could be focused on the other side. I mean, the territories only combine and get close in a small zone. There's the entire galaxy, so why would you focus on one race? The Romulans are there, the Tellarites, the Gorns, the Tholians. I mean, focus on another zone. But that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot. That's several generations of people that people won't even. Like, no one on this crew have ever met a Klingon. Yeah. I mean, I know they say they see them infrequently, but they don't even know Klingons by history books at this point. They're almost myth. I can't even conceive of 100 years, let alone. So that's, you know, it's like we're 100 years away almost from the Nazis. You know, it's that far away. It's like we haven't seen a Nazi in 97 years. That's a long time. You know.
Well, we've seen them recently in American news. But
oh, look, parallels with the trying to do. I just thought that was a really radical. Because if this is Prime, that's a boom that you just changed that entire 90 years of history. Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. I mean, yeah. But hey, it's cool to see something new.
Anyway, continuing the scene, she gets out of her flashback, wakes up, and leaves sickbay. Which sickbay is really small, by the way. It's maybe just one room in sickbay. I don't know. Maybe intensive care ward. But anyway, for Christ's sake, sedate the woman and put her back in the thing if she's going to die. I know she's got to get to or talk to the captain, but there's intercoms for that, right?
Well, hey, come on. She's doing the Carol Marcus School of Information Telling. Run to the bridge. I could just communicate, but I'm not going to. So, oh no, I fail. Wouldn't have made much difference, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she even talked to the guy outside. She said, "Hey, doctor, could you put me through the bridge?" Yeah, sure. Hey, Captain, they're Klingons. What?
Or can you have?
She was on the intercom.
Have the captain come to sickbay so I don't die, and so I can get this information to her.
I mean, and they said her genetic code was like it was a full on like genetic code was unspilling. That's a pretty serious thing to happen.
Yeah, like noodles.
Yeah.
Oh.
But then Stuart, they try to convince them, and she does. Michelle Yeoh does believe in them. The Klingon ship decloaks. Was not expecting that. Boy, a sexy effect though.
Oh, absolutely.
Sexy scene.
But I put cloaking, ? Seriously?
What did I put? Ships can uncloak. Oh, it's not very difficult.
That's not interesting.
And someone says impossible. Someone specifically says that's impossible. Making clearly not common. Making cloaks not common. Like the Romulans have gone. If they think it's that impossible, then Romulans surely can't use that many cloaks in the Romulan War, and they haven't seen cloaks. They don't think Klingons should have cloaks, so this is a huge deal.
And the Sulabons must be written out of history or covered up or
that's
classified.
100-something years ago, though, to be fair. That's a long time ago.
I know, but if there was whispers of cloaking devices back 100 years ago, of course it's a thing, right? But
now, it is worth saying that this pilot takes place in 2256. In 21 years, they get cloaking devices formally with the Klingon-Romulan Treaty. 21 years from now.
Yeah, the Klingon.
So they're 21 years early. Now, I thought, and I want to do another video about this specifically, this is an incredibly important plot point. This is the Romulan connection. This is what Brian Fuller was talking about. This is Takuma linking with the Romulans. They've given him cloaks to reunite the Empire as revenge for the Romulan War, to destroy the Federation. It's only in the Romulans' best interests. They give this one guy some cloaks. They've got them. He gets annihilated at the end of it, so they don't carry them over. But we know Bounce Terror is a thing. There's a linking there. And that was the first cloak, so why not give Takuma the first cloak?
Very interesting. I'm glad you picked up on that. I didn't. That's fantastic.
Like, I thought it was that important.
Oh, it absolutely is. I've completely forgotten about that link to the Balance of Terror.
Yeah. I guarantee that's a connection, which also explains why there's so much Vulcan in it, because then you've got that Vulcan, link. Yeah.
my question is, this is 3 hours after they brought her on board. So what are the Klingons doing? Just hoping that they're going to go to Red Alert and stick their guns out and say, hey?
Well, it's very similar to the Shinzon scene. It's like, we waited for them for 9 hours just to look at them in the face and say, you're over there, I'm dying, but I'm going to wait for 9 hours, says Shinzon. So I guess they just waited because dramatic.
It just didn't make sense that they're, like, I don't know.
Well, it's hero character syndrome. They looked out their window into the Shinjo's window and they saw the hero coming back on the bridge and they thought, now is the time to reveal ourselves. The hero's back.
Well, no, as soon as they went to Red Alert and the phase cannons came out.
Phase cannons!
Yes.
Phase cannons!
But it just didn't make sense. I mean, it's been 3 hours with nothing going on. All of a sudden she comes on the bridge and goes, oh, let's do this. Let's look aggressive. Oh, now we have a problem.
Yeah, but they are being triggered by things. You know, the Torchbearer is triggered by her being on thing. Red Alert triggers them to decloak. Sending a signal for more ships triggers the... Oh, you mean them leaving? You mean the Shinjo?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah.
It just didn't make sense. Sitting there for 3 hours makes sense to find out what the thing was and, investigate a little bit. But then for her to come on the bridge and just cause problems by going Red Alert, let's focus all our weapons on them. Oh, now they think we're aggressive. Now there's a problem. Oh, my God.
And would you not think the 3 hours, if Michael Burnham went with the suit, came back a bit damaged, wouldn't you send another team in suits to go... Like, you wouldn't spend 3 hours still not knowing what this thing is. You wouldn't wait for her to heal necessarily. I mean, you can see her damage is, blade-related, or, it's not radiation, it's not, it's something physical. Mm-hmm. So go there with a team with, guns and be like... Because she's not piloting the suit, the computer is. So they can pilot it, and they've got their guns, and, I would think they'd go check what it is out in that 3 hour... I didn't remember the 3 hour gap. But yeah.
Anyway, next scene, it's as it's meant to be. The Federation are here. They don't come in peace. They're aggressive. They've trained their guns on us. The whole come in peace thing. And then he says it later, too, when he's talking to the houses. He goes, and here it comes. She says, we come in peace. That was a theme from the beginning all the way to the end of this one. Here comes their lies.
So that's how you took it. You took it as they were saying the Federation lie, we have to kill them first.
I took it as, yes, the Federation, because it was them going to Red Alert and getting aggressive that made the Klingons go, oh, here we go, this is how it was meant to be. Look at how aggressive they are. Really? I mean, you've been cloaked the whole time. How would they know that you're there? That's just a gamble. I mean, it could seem as like prophecy that, yes, they realize that, oh, shit, we're here even though we're cloaked, and they're getting aggressive. That must be, what was intended in the Proverbs or whatever. But I think it's a little sketchy.
See, I took it as something very different. I mean, he's crazy, and he is so single-minded, Takuma. I took it as, at the start he says, the worst word is we come in peace. That's how they beat us. I took it as, we want to be Klingon. We don't want to be part of an alliance like the other races that he mentioned, Tellarites and Dorian stuff. We don't want to be part of their union. We want to be us. So we come in peace is not so much... They are aggressive. No, it's we come in peace means let's talk, means let's be friends, means we can't be ourselves.
Let's weaken the Klingon culture.
Yeah, so I am going to force this situation... I mean, the whole thing is manipulation. I'm going to force this situation to show the guys that they want just to be friends. And to be friends means no war, means peace, means fun, means friends. We don't want friends. And they do being a fleet, fine. But I took it as, I see as he's actually been cleverly planning everything here. He does, to be fair, he does a good job. Everything's actually according to his plan. And you could even argue his death at the second episode is his plan as well. He is that manic and crazy and he believes, I think he's the reincarnation of Kalis. But I saw it as, that we come in peace is we want to be friends and we are not friends and we are not going to join the Federation ever. Because if they've just seen 90 years of expansion, they've seen dozens of new races, become the whole. So he doesn't want that. He's a purist.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I see that.
So he's just playing games.
Yeah.
It's a dumb reason. I mean,
it is.
He's a dumb guy, and they're doing dumb reasons. It's not a good. He's a radical, and that's the only rationale behind it. There's no logical, I mean, you've stayed out of life for 90 years. Just do it for longer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Although you want to bring them all together, but you know.
Yeah.
Go find the Borg.
Well, wow, that's something that we're going to mention soon, I think. Anyway, I got to say something about the Klingons here. I know a lot of people complain about the Klingons. I didn't see any kind of regular-looking Klingons in the houses that we kind of hoped for. And to be honest, it doesn't look like makeup. It doesn't look like a real species. It looks like a mask. It looks like a Halloween mask that they're wearing. I'm sorry. I know who's done the makeup for it. They're two really fantastic makeup artists, Neville Page and Glenn Hedrick. But it doesn't look like makeup to me, especially Takuvama. It looks very much like a mask, like a Halloween mask or whatever. It's awful. And his delivery of his Vulcan lines, or not his Vulcan, his Klingon lines are atrocious. The pausing is very not good to speak like that. And I don't know if it's just because the actor had problems with the lines and the language, or if it was deliberate. Because if it was deliberate, it was a bad idea. It was just piss poor delivery of the Klingon lines through the whole thing.
Great pronunciation, though.
I guess. I don't speak fluent Klingon, so
neither do I. So I will say though that we're not in the second episode. We see the fleet of Klingons. I believe we haven't reached that point yet. So we don't know that the other houses aren't Klingons yet. Aren't Prime. But so in his ship, they're all his house. So they would all look like him. So we haven't reached that crushing bit yet. And we'll cover that in the next episode, the crushing bit. But yeah, I was kind of surprised, and you mentioned this earlier, the vanilla Klingon. You know, the one guy says, "I'm not going to be torchbearer," so you can refuse. Yeah. You can refuse a role. And this albino with no house, interesting. Not sure how he had no house, since he's House of Takuvama, because he's on the ship with the Takuvama house. So I guess he's not good enough for his own house. Yet he's allowed on the bridge.
Could have been a servant that was brought on board.
Sure. Yeah, sure. And I'm interested that he specifically said, you know, I mean, I love they burn himself again, very radical thing. You know, I'm going to do whatever. But he specifically said, you know, your skin color is a thing. It's not going to be a thing for me, but it is a thing. So now we're getting to racist Klingons. I don't think it's a skin color issue like blacks and whites. I think he's an albino Klingon, like some kind of genetic anomaly, right?
Which would make a lot more sense as seeming weaker than regular Klingons.
It's just we see grey, black, and purple Klingons. So there is no every Klingon's brown.
Well, exactly, and I think that's why this is an albino Klingon. Somebody that, you know, like albinos for us, they can't be in the sun very long because it's very detrimental to their health. So they're seen as weaker, and I think that's what they were going with that distinct standout.
That's interesting. So. I'm just surprised they mentioned color of skin. I mean, I know it's a social thing that we can talk about, but I
think it'll probably come up later.
Yeah. And this shot of the two of them together, it really reinforces how radically different the Klingons look. I mean, this branch of Klingons is radically, I mean, everything's integrated. That again, you could pull this race out of Star Trek. You wouldn't say it was Klingons. You could put in another race, give the exact same culture that they're showing here, and just make it a new race. Like put the Xindi, reptilians would be perfectly acceptable. Would be the exact same thing, almost. Okay, so then holograms, Stuart. We have everyday communication holograms, both with back home and also with literally you're at the edge of space to Vulcan, because she talks to him on Vulcan presumably, with Europa a few hundred miles away or whatever away, and with
8 AUs away. I think they said,
and they could walk about in 3D and move around 3D and.
I hated it. They tried it in Deep Space Nine. They tried it on the Defiant, where you turn around and you got the holographic guy. It lasted like 2 episodes, and then they got rid of it. It's a bad idea. It's very Star Wars. It does not fit the time period for TOS at all. I hated it. I absolutely hated that aspect of it.
It looked cool, but quite obnoxious. It was very in your face of, Yeah, it was, and it was also
very in your face. This is not Star Trek TOS. And I know a lot of people are going to complain, well, don't be so nitpicky and, such a Star Trek fan, but...
Don't be such a Star Trek fan for a Star Trek TV show.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, it was really, really... and considering this is a really old ship, they have phase cannons, they have phase later on, but they also have phase cannons, so they have some old tech. This is presumably an old tech, so...
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at NX01. I mean, they're still using. I mean, look at their view screen. It's just a little box. I mean, I know this is still 6 years or whatever early after that, but very odd jump in technology. I mean, I could have bought maybe like she had a pad, and the pad had like a 3D hologram slightly projected off it. It's like, okay, so it's a flat space. It's limited to a tech, but I mean, and it's not even being projected from anywhere. Like, this is almost Doctor level hologram. It's been projected. You know,
yeah,
I mean,
and
it's a hologram. It's a holographic thing.
Yeah, and then Michael comes in the room and he looks behind himself like.
Yeah, I mean,
like how many holograms does he have in front of him? Does he have the captain and then the Michael hologram comes behind him and his bridge is all of a sudden really cluttered with ghosts, with force ghosts?
Well, I thought that was really weird in the other in the later on in the second episode when he's talking to her, it's ship to ship, and he walks around the bridge and she's walking. So, like, if he's in his own practical space, he has to walk. He's just stand still and talk to her. Why are you walking around her hologram while she has to look around you walking around him? Really excessive for Star Trek, and it looked cool, but that was very stuff. I will say she had a 3D chess set in her room, and I did appreciate that it's a captain's quarters / briefing room.
Yes.
So we got that, although we'll never see it again because the Shinjo gets blown up. Although I think
we could have flashback scenes. Cause...
I think they do go on the wreckage of it. I think that's one of the plot points later on, but that's me. Okay, so then we have the conversation with Zurich. So she calls home, and he picks up within 2 seconds, out of the blue. He's not doing anything. He's in his room with holographic quarters. That was lucky.
Oh yeah, that's the problem I've always had with Star Trek, though. You know, you hail somebody, and it's like they're already sitting right at their desk, right in front of, ready to go. Like instantly, it's like, but I noticed the same thing.
That was kind of funny.
And talking about distance and being on Vulcan, there was a little hiccup when he was walking towards the desk, and all of a sudden he's sitting on the desk.
Oh, I love that. I thought that was just, that was neat.
That was good. So,
does that mean he's sitting? Does that mean he has a table that's right there as well?
See, that's what I don't get, because he's interacting with her environment, sitting on her desk. He would have. It's I have no idea.
I mean, you could argue he's on a Federation starship as well, and therefore it's a similar crew quarters of it. But again, we're overthinking it. But that was a distinct moment, and it says more advancement. I mean, very, very odd. I appreciate though he said always been on a cold side of war, with only fleeting interactions. That was nice. We're setting up that. But if you're only fleeting, that's 90 years of a Cold War where you just do so little and yet also have terrorist attacks. They were pushing the metaphor of the Klingons in every direction, you know.
They were, because in the 60s with TOS, it was very much a Cold War feel, like the U.S. and Russia. Russia wasn't launching terror attacks on U.S. during the Cold War. There might have been one or two little skirmishes here or there, but it was very much, over territory or something. It wasn't called a terror attack. So yeah, they're trying to meld today's sensibilities of terrorism, the fear of terrorism, and then still try to anchor it to the TOS Cold War vibe that they had between the Klingons and the Federation. And I don't think it worked because it's two different ideologies that they're trying to force on these Klingons.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people picked up on that.
Well, now they will. But I mean, a terror attack is not there to kill people. It's there to create terror. So the Klingons are trying to put terror into the Federation. Why? The 12 houses later on, they don't seem. They're not believing Tukuma for wanting a war until he proves it, and they said they're fighting themselves. Generations of interconflict. So I mean, I guess maybe one house hates them for doing terror attacks, but it wouldn't be terror attacks. They'd be renegade Klingons. So the Empire is launching terror attacks. Okay, let's start a war then. Let's kill us.
Well, exactly. And if it's like the Cold War of the 60s, if Russia was doing terror attacks on America, the nuke would have been launched. The button would have been pushed. The war would not have been a Cold War.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. This is when she was a kid. So you're looking at 20 years since the terror attack. That was their last interaction. They haven't obviously said since then. Maybe they stopped in terror attacks 20 years ago. It was a renegade thing. But
could be.
Very odd things. And I was really surprised by Sarek says, maybe by killing another Klingon, because they killed your parents, is only fair. I
think he meant it could be considered as fair.
By some.
I don't think he was...
He said by some, but I don't think Mark Glenner would say, well, some might say that murdering someone or killing them by accident would make up for killing your parents. He would say, killing under any circumstance is not... I don't think Mark Leonard would say that. But he's a young Sarek. He's 15 years younger. But I was like, Jesus, Zurich.
Yeah.
Make her feel better by saying it's not her fault. Don't say, I can see, or some people can see it was good to kill him. It made up for the karma. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What?
And
okay.
I've also been reading online that people are complaining about the way people have said Zurich's name. Apparently it was mispronounced in the show. I didn't notice it, but quite a few people have commented on that. So I got to go back and watch it again. But
and I will say, anyway. He felt like a young Zurich. His acting. He wasn't Zurich, but he was a young Zurich. That was my thing. Like, I liked the performance, but he wasn't Martin Leonard, but he was younger. He felt more impetuous. He felt more...
Yeah.
Something else.
15 years for a Vulcan really isn't that long.
True.
I feel he didn't have Zurich's gravitas, like his presence.
Well, is he ambassador? Well, I guess was he ambassador in? Yeah, he was ambassador in TO. So I guess he's not the ambassador yet. So he's not. He hasn't put on those responsibilities yet. I'm assuming.
Could be. It could be. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But well, that's not true, because when he drops her off on the ship 7 years earlier, he says even in diplomatic relations, you need to have niceties, which makes me think that he's an ambassador then, or he's at least on his way to becoming an ambassador, perhaps. Yeah. But that scene, he seemed more stoic than he did at this scene, which is like 7 years later.
Yeah, I don't know.
So the next scene, of course, we see them on the bridge, and she's talking about how we have to strike first, show our strength like the Vulcans have with the Klingons. That's how you deal with Klingons. It's our way of saying hello.
Vulcan,
you have to be strong. Yep. Well, exactly. Yes. And then she basically confronts the captain on the bridge, and the captain's like, my ready room now. Mm-hmm. They go in, and I love the doors closing, and then computer privacy mode, and all of a sudden the windows get frosted.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really neat.
Nice touch. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's TOS, but whatever. Anyway, it was pretty cool. And I assume that, like, in Orville, it would make the room soundproof. I mean, Orville's ready room isn't soundproof because they heard the yelling on the bridge in episode 1, right? Everybody said
but the ships
should be soundproof.
Even old ships in Discovery have more of a budget to build them stronger than Orville.
There you go.
Yeah. So, what did you think about? We've now got a canonical first meeting of Vulcans and Klingons. The Klingons destroyed the first Vulcan ship, and from then on until they created relations, they just attacked Klingon ships. And we know Vulcan ships are far superior to Klingons, so you would think the Vulcans might have destroyed multiple ships before they even started talking. And it's weird that the Klingons would be able to destroy the first Vulcan. It must have been a small ship, and there's also small ships. So, what do you think about the first? Did that seem very Vulcan-y?
No, it didn't. Just shooting at people because of the first interaction you had with them isn't very logical. I don't think it didn't come off as something the Klingon or the Vulcans would do. In my mind, I didn't really give it much thought, to be honest with you. But looking at it now, I don't see it as a very logical thing for them to do.
I mean, there is no Vulcan Empire, so Vulcan is Vulcan plus friends of Vulcan. So. And Klingon Empire is quite far away, so
Vulcan and super friends.
Yeah. So obviously they met Klingons, and I'm sure our ship's been lost. We're going to go out and investigate. So there probably wasn't like 8 or 9 accidental bump-ins when they attacked each other. They probably then sent an envoy, but it would have been nice if he said, so from then on we attacked and disabled every Klingon ship we saw to send a message. Attacked and disabled. Because they can disable them really easily. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, they're out of weapon power, whatever. I could see that. We are going to actively disable you. You tell your command, we want to talk, we're leaving, get out of our... Well, we haven't got space, get out of our realm of influence. It was a bit of a strange one. But I can't imagine that would have been many interactions before they just went and talked peace. Because like we know Enterprise, far superior technology to Klingons. I mean, the ships are... look, we know the size of the D5 and the Raptor, and that's well into the Klingons, talking to the Vulcans. The Vulcan ships are 3 times the size. I mean, infinitely stronger as a race. And
then she uses the Vulcan neck pinch on the captain. And I wrote down, Vulcan neck pinch? Really? There's only one other human that's mastered the Vulcan neck pinch, and that's 7 of 9. One of the reasons the Vulcan neck pinch works for Vulcans is because Vulcans, they can emit electricity or like force from their fingers. Plus, they're stronger than humans. So humans can't master it. That's kind of the point.
I think that's very broad though, because she was brought up on, of all the people, like I would think Sarek would teach her that, because if every Vulcan could do it, it's a useful mechanism.
Well, if her physiology could,
he clearly
do
could
it.
though, because she could do it.
But can she do a mind meld?
Well, no, because she hasn't got any psychic powers like Vulcans have.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Vulcans they emit energy or energy, whatever, from their fingertips. Depends on which canon source or non-canon source you're using. Yeah. But
I'm pretty sure that Picard did it once because he learned it off Sarek. Like his mind meld gave him bonus little things, but he did it on Tuvok once. The irony, but not Tuvok, human Tuvok. So it's not unprecedented. And obviously, if Sarek could have just because we know mind melded with her. That's a hell of a thing from episode 2. So I guess just imprinted the native ability, the bonus.
It could be, yeah.
It's theoretically just all pressure points / confidence. But yeah,
through a uniform, through a thick uniform.
Everyone can do that. I mean, that's just But yeah, but then she took command for about 10 seconds. Everyone listened to her about 10 seconds.
And I gotta say, this is where one of my favorite characters comes in. I love Saru. I think he's fantastic, and the fact that he's like, you're sweating at your hairline, your heart rate.
That's very Data like.
Yeah, and I love his character. He's like my favorite character so far. He's not. He's my second favorite character. Oh. But I can't talk about my favorite character.
He was actively complex as a character.
Yes.
Although I do think the whole coming of death, they really pushed that in the trailer. I don't buy that as a concept. I mean, how do you sense death without sensing time conceptual? I mean, that's why just you have a hunch that shit's gonna hit the fan. You can't sense death. It's not unless you're. Is a precognition. I mean, very strange thing, but he was complex, underutilized, but that's fine.
Well, so far
they all kind of work except the main lead. That's kind of it was really just the story of the 3 and the 2 above the 3 and the 1 above the 1. It was not an ensemble piece at all. No. So one small tech thing: phone torpedo is locked. And if you look, the entire ship is a torpedo tube, both lines. Literally, the entire line of the hull on either side of the launchers are torpedo tubes. So,
wow,
big thing. And they got literal bullets, which we mentioned, to the right as well. So she comes in, points a phaser at her. The obelisk stops being very, very bright, which we didn't mention. It goes very, very bright, and it stops being very, very bright. Saru looks worried. Klingon ships come in, and fade to black.
Bye, guys.
Oh, fade to black. So, Stuart, final thoughts, because this was a hell of a review. Thoroughly enjoyed. If you guys enjoyed it, a lot to discuss. Episode 2 will be less to review, guys, because less happened and there's less. This is the setup of the universe, so we have more to talk about. But this is the start of the Discoveryverse, so we want to really do it in depth. What were your final thoughts on episode 1 of the 2?
Had a lot of great moments. It started out really strong for me, like I said, with the relay and stuff. I thought it was very Star Trek-esque, and then it kind of fell apart in a few spots. Some of the technology really bothered me, like the holograms, things like that. Like I said, Saru was great. I do like Admiral Anderson, but I'll talk more about him in episode 2. Cool. I thought he was an actual really, really good character. Overall, I thought it was an impressive first outing. But it missed the mark and kind of dropped the ball in a few spots as far as Star Trek goes. And I got to say that episode 1 is better than episode 2. And that's where I'll leave it for now.
Well, a quick thing, filmmaking wise, like technically wise, how does it stand for you?
Oh, it's impressive. The acting wasn't great in my opinion. The writing wasn't the best, but visually, they did a lot of fantastic directing and visual style, which is it's definitely its own thing, and that I kind of like. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think it was a strong first episode. I came away thinking so glad I got part 2 to watch in about 2 seconds. I really want to know what happened. And yeah, the acting was fine. No one, like I said, it was not an ensemble piece, and the lead is fine. But again, this is the prequel. This is the prequel before the main stories, so we haven't got to know them really.
Yes.
It was well shot. It was, again, this obviously the set design bothers us. The spaces bothered us. All the Trek continuity bothered us, except the new bits, which are interesting, like 100 years, phase cannons. There's some, and the sound effects were awesome. There's lots of little, literally, I said when phase cannons like yay, you know, and the 100 years war was like ooh. Mm-hmm. Lots of little moments like that I really sort of tuned in on because we're very in that sort of world of stuff. But yeah, like I say, this one definitely stronger than part 2. Not to say you should enjoy part 2 because you're going to watch the review later on. You will enjoy part 2. But yeah, definitely a fun, interesting episode. Good pace, good build up. It was great to see so much Klingon perspective. And obviously the promise of we're going to see other houses, so we're going to see other style of Klingons was great. You know, the potential was there. This was a great self-contained little story with big implications, and its potential was ramping up, ready for this part 2.
And I got to say, there was a lot of meat on the bone as far as storytelling went. There was a lot packed into that hour.
Yes, in this one.
It felt very intense. Unlike Orville episode 1, where in our review of that, I said it felt like less than like a half-hour show.
Yeah.
It just didn't have the meat. I mean,
yes, this one certainly did.
This one had a lot going on and a lot to focus on. I don't know if it's just because we've been looking forward to this for a year and a half, and because we're Trekyards, we're picking everything apart. I don't know if that's the reason it seemed so intense, but it definitely had something there that was that gave it some meat.
And I will say, I was able to watch this very happily as both a fan of media, a Star Trek fan, looking at cinematography, because it ticked cinematography, it ticked, all this stuff, and because I've already accepted it's not going to be the Trek of the time in terms of continuity, I also have to look past that and notice the things that are cool. And I saw lots of little cool things. I wish I'd done more. Holograms obviously is a bit ridiculous. And yeah, like I said, this one left me with thinking of promise, and it was exciting, and some weird things with Torchbearer, and some really weird things, and I probably would have rewritten it. I think this episode was probably, in terms of writing story, like an 8 out of 10. Like, strong, but you could probably refine it and change a couple of things to really get it better. Take out a couple of things.
Give it like a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10 for writing.
Well, I mean, overall, like as an overall package, an 8, I think. It started strong and it went on.
Oh yeah, it started out really, really nice.
Yeah, I think probably an 8 for the pilot. First pilot. First part of the first pilot, because there'll be 2.
I'm still going to say 7 for me. So
okay. Well, we'll split and say 7.5, which is 3/4. Yay! Well done. So there you go, guys. Yeah. That is the ridiculously long, fully in-depth look at the entire episode with discussion, theorization. I think we both realised new things and saw new things thanks to each other's notes. So glad we're here to do this, and we need to go film part 2. So thank you guys for watching. Stuart, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
He's Captain Foley. He's always said bye. And I'm Commander Cockins, and I say...
see you in part 2.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye.